Well, in this episode of the Event Promoter Podcast, we're going to be talking about everything after parties. Howie was on our previous episode about live streaming with volume.com, but Howie actually himself is a pretty prolific promoter, organizer, artist management, like basically everything in the live music sphere. Got your start doing, I mean, I try to put through your resume, and there was just like so much stuff on it, working at Music Unlimited with Dave Graham, consulting on Lollapalooza and Horde. You talked about that, and concerts, and still doing work with that over time. And but one of the things that jumped out at me was the Phish After Parties that you've been doing for a very long time. And those seem to be doing those seem to be pretty successful. And After Parties is something that, talking to hundreds of venues myself and promoters, it comes up often. They just kind of want to know, they're like, I see this happening, and maybe they're trying it, but haven't quite figured out the formula to make it work, both in terms of for the audience and also kind of navigating the, like, is it cool to use the name of the band, that kind of stuff, which we'll touch on. So I really wanted to bring you on to talk about that. I'll give you a chance real quick to introduce yourself on what I just said there.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Craig. I appreciate it. Yeah, so I'm, a longtime promoter. My business partner in CEG, which is my concert company, worked for a company that put on some early Phish shows in Syracuse. I never actually put on a Phish show, but I've been fortunate enough to do shows with each individual member.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would consider that I have a good relationship with that camp, which, getting into, we were just talking about it, but getting into like the legality of things, and there's nothing illegal about describing what the after party is. So like a Phish after party, there's nothing illegal about that. But if Phish had requested years ago or now or any time that we not use their name, then we would, of course, we wouldn't do that. We're not going to we want to be cool with everybody. But I think Phish in particular, it wasn't a deliberate thing that I had in mind to sort of be in their good graces. We just sort of naturally started to do some benefits for Waterwheel, which then wound up being, probably a decade into doing these Phish After Parties. Waterwheel's Phish's foundation, and which is a great one. And so a function of that Phish After Party series that we do wherever it is, because we do it in other markets, but primarily in New York, and I'll get to that. Why New York is the best. We started donating $1 per ticket for the Phish After Parties. So we've donated quite a bit of money to them and to Waterwheel, and I feel great about that. So I think we're in their good graces, but there have been instances. I did when Wolfpack played Madison Square Garden. We did this great after party nearby. It was Mono Neon with Domi and JD Beck, and we billed it as a Wolfpack after party. And I don't know, the band or the man, whoever didn't like it, but the agent called me and asked me to stop. So we, immediately we just turned it into an MSG after party. It didn't hurt sales. It sold out. So
yeah. I think you said something pre-call here where you were just like, just be cool. And probably
exactly.
From the word official is kind of something else we were talking about.
Yeah. And I've gone the other way where I've actually said unofficial. Like
there you go. Yeah.
Who could give you a hard time about that?
Yeah, I think those after parties are such a key thing, because I mean, I think a lot of people, if you just think about going to a concert, especially one that doesn't end at like 2 or 3 in the morning, but even if they do, I can think of so many times where like going to a show at Emo's in Austin and going down to Buzzmill afterwards, and they have a band playing there, and to my knowledge, they never officially turn those into after parties, but they really should. Because it's basically what just happens, because it's literally across the street and Buzzmill's open basically all night. But anyway, so like, let's touch on just like how you got started doing those. Like, what was the idea behind that? And is there a way that you think about them differently now?
Yeah, I do think about it differently. I mean, and we've done it with, the Garden is, everybody plays the Garden. So we've done lots and lots of after parties, even that, we're strong. I think after parties go best in the jam community. And, back to why it's a really good thing in New York City, why New York is the best, is they can serve alcohol till 4 a.m. And a lot of cities, it's 2 a.m. In New Orleans, there's no curfew. So we do a series in New Orleans during Jazz Fest, and those are definitely after parties because the fairgrounds at Jazz Fest has to end by 7 o'clock because it's in a residential neighborhood. People go back to their hotels, they go to dinner, and then they come to shows. And our early shows start at 10 p.m. and our late shows start at 2 a.m. And
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, and people do that. And that's become a really big thing. And I've been doing it since 2008. But there's just a lot of people that don't even go to the fairgrounds anymore, that just come down for the late nights because there's so many of them, whether it's in New Orleans or New York. And it's, I think the really important part for people out there is to understand who the audience is that you're trying to target. Really, really understand that. And because curation is incredibly important. And we've had, put on bands as favors to agents kind of thing. That I didn't know it. If I don't know it, there's a good chance that the audience doesn't know it, because I know, we're booking my company books at a small club level to start, and so we just know lots of bands at that level. It's just really important to know who that audience is. We knew Wolfpack, that instance I gave before. We knew that audience was savvy enough to know that there was a lot of crossover between those two worlds. And Phish is the easiest thing for me because I'm a huge fan. And that's really how I started doing that, was in the 90s. I was booking a venue. Our headliners just started at midnight. New York was a later town back then. And so we just thought, well, people are going to be at the Garden, so why don't we book headliners, that will appeal to the Phish audience? And that's really how it started. And I was booking the things that I liked and that I knew Phish fans liked. It's a little more challenging than it was back in 90 and or in the 90s and in the early 2000s, because back then Phish they were young and their audience was very young. Their audience has gotten older, and so you have a smaller population to try to grab to a late night. And you got to really, I think, part of that curation I was talking about is you've got to make it unique. You have to make it something that people can't just go see at a convenient time in their hometown.
What do you think are some ways that you do that you make something unique?
So I haven't announced these yet, but we did it. I guess we did it we did it last year as a Phish After Party. Now we're doing 2 nights. So it's a band. It's Medeski, Martin, Metzger, and Klein. So Medeski, Martin, of course, are from Medeski, Martin, and Wood, and they don't tour really. They I think they've done one show in the last 5 or 6 years because their bass player Chris Wood has just been busy with the Wood brothers. But there's really pent up demand for Medeski, Martin, and Wood. The Metzger is Scott Metzger from J-Rad, and the Klein is Nels Klein from Wilco, who's they're both fantastic guitarists. And so we did it last year. It blew out really quickly. We're going to do 2 nights this year, and that's something. It's not touring. They've never toured that project. It was something that I discussed with Medeski, Martin, Wood's manager back in 2019, and when we first did it, and we just were like kicking it because I wanted to book MMW, but they weren't available. It's like, well, John and Billy Medeski, Martin, they're available. Maybe we could put something together. So we just kind of were throwing out some different musicians and came up with that. And so yeah, that's super unique. I don't think I'm going to wind up doing it this year, but over the years, we've done this project called James Brown Dance Party, which is this great drummer, Adam Chase. He thought of this project and a bunch of other projects. And the idea is we've always had members of James Brown's band, but then with the younger players who were inspired by James Brown, people like Adam Deitch from Lettuce, and we had Antoine Stanley, who's a vocalist with Wolfpack, and just people, young funk players, basically playing the music of James Brown with these older cats. That's
really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's always been really fun.
Yeah, I think those are really cool concepts. I think that's a lot tougher to pull off outside of a market like New York or something where the concentration, or even, New Orleans or something where the concentration of those artists maybe aren't there. Although, like, I've seen, there's a great club here in Omaha called the Jewel. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a small jazz club that, and we have some like players that used to play with all these old jazz bands and like trumpet players, and usually like, the person that was playing the saxophone next to like Louis Armstrong or something. But and I'm terrible at remembering the names of all these artists and stuff. That's really not, necessarily my scene. But when they do shows there and they can promote that of like those artists, like it performs really well. And I could imagine if they tied that to some somewhat related band that was playing at the bigger stadium nearby, CHI, that would perform really well because it's in like the basement of the hotel that's like right next door.
Yeah.
But so there's probably, even in markets that are tertiary and kind of smaller markets, I bet there are ways that people can leverage that same idea. Maybe not quite on the same scale, but
Yeah, no doubt. And you gotta be willing to get your hands dirty. Your relationships are going to be really important. With the James Brown dance party, I mean, Adam, the drummer, has lots of relationships, but so do I. And so it's a collaborative effort, and it's much easier to just have an agent, reach out to an agent, send an offer, get it confirmed, just to for one band, without all these other elements. While that might be easier, it's not going to necessarily sell the same amount of tickets as putting together a collaboration that has never happened before. And that's been a big function of my Jazz Fest series as well, is trying to make it unique, and always having an element to New Orleans. That has been important, like tying it to New Orleans, because I think people are really looking for that. And again, it's like, sure, you could just book another stop on the tour, but then consider that because people going to Jazz Fest are from all over, right? So you got to consider that you could take that easy route and just book the thing that is touring all around, where those people that you're trying to get to buy tickets could just go see in their hometown. After they want to see something that they've never seen before. And even like we're going to do, we started this annual with Daniel Donato's Cosmic Country, who I absolutely love. And that, it's not just another stop on the tour. We had George Porter Jr. from the Meters play, and Brandon Lewis from Preservation Hall Jazz Band. And, so we're going to do that again, where we're going to have some local elements just to give it that New Orleans flavor, but also, while at the same time making it unique.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I mean, so much of music events is curation, right? Of like, I think people are looking for some kind of like kitschy kind of gimmick or something that's going to draw people. But it's like, if you curate some great musicians in one room, people will come out to see it.
No doubt. Yeah.
And I think there's opportunities with like the DJ sets and things like that, where someone that maybe just doesn't have that roster or doesn't have that network could experiment with and figure out ways to also serve that audience. And it depends on the audience. There might be some audiences that are totally into that kind of vibe, and others that are like, I only really want to see it live. I think both of those are two different audiences, and you just have to be real about who you're catering to.
Yeah, and I think it's a good idea to just kind of stay in your lane with what you know. And then if you don't really know it, then that's if you're a venue owner, that's when you perhaps partner with a local promoter or have them room and give them favorable terms, because it's late at night when you're probably going to be closed anyway.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. All right. Well, we're out of time, but I think that we got some good stuff on these after parties, and I appreciate your time, Howie. And
thank you, Greg.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool.